Ladies and gentlemen, if you follow any sports at all, then you know that after a player is finished with some sort of match or a team is finished, they have to usually sit in front of some sort of podium and answer media questions. And if you like basically any sport, there's always going to be some pretty absurd interview questions asked, or there are going to be legendary interview answers. And in this video, I'm going to give you the top 5 best, worst, however you want to classify them. Now, I was inspired by a Twitter post, actually like a Substack post that I saw from someone named Mr. Dodgy. Mr. Dodgy is kind of like the world champion of chess memes, if you've never heard of the guy. I believe he's European. I've seen him with photos in like fields with horses, so I just imagine that's European. He's got a very funny Twitter page, and he wrote about this. Now, I actually had this idea a long time ago. I'm like, yeah, there's been a lot of chess interviews, and I have made a video on the best chess interview on YouTube, but today we are looking at the top 5 list, and I will show you the games, and I will show you the context, beginning with the very first one. Now, this one hasn't aged very well, okay? I'm gonna be honest with you. This is the all-time legendary clip by Hans Niemann called "The Chess Speaks for Itself."
Magnus Carlsen, and now I'm curious to hear some reactions from Hans in Miami.
Hans, yesterday was a terrible day for you, and today you start out with a masterpiece. How would you summarize it?
Chess speaks for itself.
Is it something special doing this against Magnus, Hans?
I muted myself. Okay, so a couple of things about this interview. Hans Niemann just got done defeating Magnus Carlsen at the FTX Crypto Cup in Miami. I told you this did not age well, but this is a legendary chess clip. Now, a couple of things are really hilarious in that interview. He's just walking away, and there's the interviewer still asking him a question. Also, can I just ask, who is this? That is not a player involved in the event. This is just a random dude. A lot of random stuff is going on in this clip. All right, the chess speaks for itself. And certainly, the chess did speak for itself in this game. Hans played into the Rossolimo, an opening that Magnus basically popularized himself over the last decade, literally since his World Championship match versus Fabiano Caruana. And it was a super complicated game. It was a little bit of a sideline. Magnus went for a crazy knight infiltration early, trying to take advantage of the fact that Hans King was in the middle. Hans just slid out of the way and acted like nothing was wrong. Then Hans proceeded to untangle his pieces completely and play h6, g5, and walk his king manually to safety. Just unbelievable technique here. It takes 3 hand king moves to get the king to h7, and now, as Magnus is still trying to kind of like push forward and push the pace, this game really reminded me of the fight between Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya. Robert Whittaker was the dominant champion. He was an instigating kind of fighter. He always jumped, lunged in, kicked and everything. And it felt like he was just a little bit overconfident in that matchup against Adesanya, the first one. The second one, some people believe that Izzy lost that fight. It was a tough one. But that's kind of how this one felt. And Hans just dealt with everything perfectly. Got his king to h7, and then rotated his queen and started this violent counterattack on Magnus. g4. He was like, you attacking my king? I don't think so. hg, bishop g4. And Magnus tried his best to consolidate, but it was just a matter of time before he got hit with a vicious uppercut. You can't take this because of this. And the rook's just going to have to be sacrificed. h3 is the killing blow, and the whole white position just absolutely collapses. This was an extremely impressive game, and the context of this game was that the day before, Hans tilted and he lost all 3 games to Duda. So Hans got his first win, and he got it in emphatic fashion versus the world champ. This was crazy, and he got on camera and he said something super epic. I mean, can you really argue with how amazing that was? And then Hans proceeded to lose every single matchup beyond that. He finished the FTX Crypto Cup with 0 points. He did not win a single. He won games. He won individual games, and he actually did have like a kind of a decent win rate, but he was losing every rapid match 2.5 to 1.5. It was just unreal. The luck just did not go his way after that. Okay, the skill and the luck, whatever you want to argue, but yeah, that one did not age well, unfortunately. But okay, I have a couple more for you. Now, this one is from the Vishwanathan Anand Magnus Carlsen World Championship match in 2013. The one that Carlsen first won. This was Carlsen's winning of the title and taking it from Vichy. Vichy had the match in his home city, in his home country. I don't think he might be from Chennai, but it was in the home country. And I mean, it was in Chennai. Chennai is an epic place for chess. And he dealt with a lot of tough questions, tough interview questions. So in game number 6, there was this legendary interview, which I'm going to show you here on the slightly smaller screen. The resolution of this video was not great. So this journalist asked Vichy this.
Mr. Anand says this is a big blow for you. How will you now work to mend this big blow for you?
Well, you just do your best.
Oh my goodness, I keep muting myself. Basically, the question was, you said this is a low for you. How are you going to bounce back from your low? I'm going to do my best. You would think that would just kind of be like, don't ask me this again. Folks, I'm not joking. Then this happened.
Other questions?
Same guy.
So, please.
Well, I'm still wondering if Mr. Anand can elaborate what he means by doing your best again. Obviously, I've been doing
your best means doing your best. I don't know why you don't understand English.
Oh my God, Vichy. I don't understand why you can't understand English. In 2022, if an American said that to an Indian journalist, can you imagine? But it's Vichy. Vichy delivered the smackdown. He's like, bro, I don't know what you want me to say. All right, I lost. I said I'm doing my best. Okay. Now, this was just game 6, okay? Game 6 was a very long endgame, and Vichy was ultimately defeated in the endgame. Game 9, however, was the turning point of this match because it was Vichy's it felt like his closest chance to strike back, right? The match was decided by 3 decisive games for Carlsen and none for Vichy, so game 9 was a big one because Vichy really had a big attack for a while. And Vichy showed up to the press conference after he lost, unfortunately, and was asked this question.
But actually, you spent also a lot of time after this B3 move. Did you try really to calculate all these complications, all these variations till the end somehow, or was it possible?
No, I was thinking what to eat tonight.
So Anastasia Karlovich, to her credit, is a great chess journalist. She is she's very good at her job. But sometimes you don't know what to ask chess players after really painful defeats. And this was a really painful defeat for Vichy. Okay, because he was down 2-0 in the match, and this was the game that he was going to apply pressure to Magnus. He played the same-ish variation of the Nimso Indian. He got a really crazy attacking game. This is one of these lines where white just gets a bunch of space, and black is basically like, look, you can attack me here, I'm gonna attack you here, let the best man win. And literally, that is what happened. Magnus played b5 and a5. It looked like Magnus almost did not know how to play chess. Look at Magnus's pieces. He has one knight out and a5 and b5. But no, he very much knows how to play chess. And even though white has a very powerful initiative, look, e5 and f4, somehow black is just in time with b4. It doesn't look like it's supposed to make any damn sense. Look at white's position. Isn't white just gonna march you down and beat you up? You would think so. You would think that white outnumbers black, but black has just enough counterplay, okay? AB, we trade. The only thing that black has is the potential threat of promotion. Here comes Vichy with f5, Vichy with queen f4, Vichy with f6. I mean, it looks like black is suffocating. It doesn't look like there is anything here. Queen h4. And the question that Anastasia Karlovich asked was, in the following position, what Vichy Anand had calculated. Vichy had just gotten done explaining everything that went through his mind, okay? Basically, black, if you're looking at this position and you're confused what is going on, black has been allowed to make a queen because white is about to go deliver mate. Black has been stuffed in this position and there is nothing they can do to prevent rook h4 and mate, except the absurd sacrifice of the queen. You sack the queen, and you get just enough time to defend mate. And the game ends in a draw after this pawn move. It's just, I'm not gonna go, crazy on my explanations here. That is the situation, okay? You allow them to queen, but you have a devastating attack with bishop f1. And Vichy was explaining that he had calculated queen d1, rook h4, queen h5, knight h5, gh5, bishop h3 to prevent bishop f5. And the reason he didn't play this was after bishop f5, rook h3, bishop h3, rook h3, he thought that this might have been a draw. which he was correct about, perpetual check, if you take, then here. But then he realized that there is this maneuver, and then there is a check on b1, and then queen g6, and black is actually winning. And he was correct, for the most part. I mean, like, he was kind of explaining everything, well, the interview question was basically, so you spent a lot of time after b3, were you calculating all of these variations? Which, to a tilted grandmaster, must have been extremely frustrating, and he goes, nah, I was thinking about dinner. Yeah, well, you know, and what actually ended up happening in the game was he overthought it, and he played knight f1, and knight f1 is actually a fatal mistake, because queen e1, and queen will sacrifice for the rook. And this was Magnus's third win in the match, and he went on to win the match in the very next game. So this was an extremely tilting defeat for Vishy, who obviously then had to deal with the question of, you know, were you actually thinking about that stuff? And he goes, no, I was thinking about dinner. At number 3, we have a legendary run of interviews. So Vishy Anand was a bit pissed off, but Alexander Grishuk, who played this game with the black pieces, in the 2018 the candidates tournament to determine who will play for the World Championship, was an absolute savage. They made 2 Thug Life compilations because he literally was showing up to every post-game press conference and just ripping himself apart, ripping apart the game, ripping apart the venue. It all was off to a great start in the very first game that he played against Vladimir Kramnik. All right? Enjoy.
I was sure that you were thinking about the game, but I just asked, how did you feel about the playing venue? I mean, the fact that it started finally the tournament.
No, it's a bad day for me for this question, because I think the playing conditions are absolutely terrible. But now that I lost, I mean, it will sound like an excuse or something, but I mean, believe me, it's not. I mean, there is no even water in the toilet. And,
the playing conditions are absolutely terrible. There is no even water in the toilet. So this venue was some sort of hotel or convention center in 2018, and the players did not have their own bathrooms. I'm not talking about an individual bathroom per player. The players shared a bathroom with the general public. That's nuts. I mean, just imagine, like, US Open tennis just finished here in New York, and the players just don't have their own locker room. Like, random people are just can come. It's a crazy thing to think about. Listen, chess players aren't as widely respected as other athletes. It is what it is. And Grishuk in this game was like, look, you know, I'm gonna sound like I'm upset or whatever because I lost, but it's not an excuse. And you'll notice that the game itself actually is kind of relatively tranquil in the opening. Kramnik was not interested in playing into Grishuk's King's Indian defense. Grishuk played like a super sideline variation. And Kramnik started this event extremely well. This was a legendary candidates run from Kramnik, who started his first like 3 games. He was 2.5 out of 3. He was 3 out of 4. He was just absolutely top form. But then he started having setbacks later in the event, and ultimately just, I don't remember how he did, but he obviously didn't win the whole thing. The game here wasn't like, there was nothing too interesting or fascinating about the game in question. Grishuk ended up down in exchange, but had a relatively complicated position. He had like bishops sort of flying all over the board. The game itself doesn't hold a tremendous amount of context to actually what Grishuk was upset about in the interview. He was outplayed very methodically by Kramnik, who had a slightly better position and a strong initiative throughout the game. You'll notice here the 2-on-1 majority on the queen side, and, well, Kramnik did Kramnik things. I mean, he was a positional just genius. He was an expert calculator, and Grishuk tried to sacrifice a pawn to get into some sort of endgame like this, but the a-pawn just started running, and that a-pawn proved to be decisive as it marched to a6, and given a few more opportunities to move, it would have gone to a7 and a8. I highly recommend you watch the Thug Life compilation. I mean, it's just, there was a storyline during the 2018 candidates that Grishuk was holding a water bottle that he was urinating into. Yeah, I think that was disproven. I think he said I obviously wasn't doing that. It was just juice. But the 2018 candidates was just ludicrous. It was so goofy. It was epic. Now, The last two are spectacular. It was 2017. It was the Paris Grand Chess Tour, and Magnus Carlsen was, doing Magnus Carlsen things. He was playing, and he was doing well in the event. But when the St. Louis broadcast invited him to this interview, it got a little bit tense. Have a look.
Well, we're with the king of rapids. Magnus Carlsen has taken at least that title. Not that it means anything as far as this tournament is concerned, but at least he's shown that he is indeed the best player in the world and starting off the Grand Chess Tour quite well. Magnus, you seem to have some hiccups earlier today. You didn't have really smooth performances, and this game wasn't that smooth either. It looked a little bit unclear. What was your feeling overall as the game was transpiring?
Okay, I mean, what
Uh-oh.
do you want me to do? So, I mean, I take the piece, and then, I mean, of course, he hasn't done anything particularly wrong. Of course, it's not going to be lost. I mean, what do you?
For the record, this shows that Magnus has won 5 games and drawn 4. He is undefeated in Rapid, in this Rapid event. So 5 wins, 4 draws. Just a different scoring system.
You want from?
Well, we're with the king.
So yeah, Magnus was like, I mean, what do you want me to do? And then actually it goes on a little bit longer than that. I think I might have restarted it. Magnus was like, oh, you're belittling the whole thing. And then later in that interview, Magnus was like, oh, I have no expectations for the rest of the event. I'm just going to try to not win. I'm going to try to win some not smooth games. The game in question, right? And people have mixed feelings about, how Maurice Ashley approached this interview. I thought the initial wording of the question could have been a little bit better. I guess it's just trying to create a little bit of a storyline. I understand it as a, YouTuber, commentator myself. You got to create some storylines. Magnus was winning the event, but some of the games were a little bit rocky. They weren't as dominant. And so Magnus was like, what do you want from me? You want me to get like an advantage from the opening and crush them all the way? And then, it was just a very long interview and it had like bits and pieces. But basically this was the game. Carlsen played in Italian, and Bacrot from France, obviously representing France because this was in Paris, you got a relatively pleasant position from the opening. I mean, it's an e4, e5 game, right? And Bacrot traded off the bishops with Magnus and then kind of started attacking, right? He started taking, playing e5. Position actually looked quite good for Bacrot, and Magnus played the move g3 here. And Etienne sacrificed the knight. He just gave the knight away, right? And so Magnus was like, he hasn't done anything particularly wrong. What do you want me to do? Like, my opponent is a 2700, you know what I mean? He's not gonna implode. He's not gonna play like that idiot GothamChess who always puts me on all his thumbnails. I don't know how Magnus knew the future 5 years ago, but, you gotta be good at predicting the future to be good at chess. Well, what did Magnus do for the rest of this game? Well, he was just up a knight. Now, look at the eval bar, okay? The eval bar, just like 5 or 6 moves after Magnus wins the piece, just completely goes in his favor. +2, queen g5, rook d3, right? Rook d6, queen takes. Okay, it's like an endgame, right? And Magnus just gonna try to win the pawns here, centralize his rooks. And Bacrot finally just gets a little bit desperate and gets cut off here. And you can't play g5 because rook h6, and this is going to be game over. What about that was not smooth? Like, I was actually when I saw this game, I always knew the interview, and I actually just saw the interview a long time ago and was like, oh yeah, he won a not smooth game. But in looking at this game, what exactly was not smooth? Magnus literally played top move of the engine every single move until the end. He got the piece sacrificed against him, and I think except for one move, maybe, every move was like holding the advantage or growing it. And it just kind of made me laugh. I was like, yeah, it wasn't a very good question. It was worded a little bit, but I get it. I get it as an interviewer, as a commentator. You kind of try to like and Magnus was not having it, okay? Just not having it at all. And there's a very funny interview from that same event by Levon Aronian. You can go look it up. Write in the comments, say I sent you. Where Levon makes a joke to Maurice, and Maurice is like, I've never heard of that concept before, that Levon is explaining. And then Levon goes, yeah, that's why I'm a great player and you're not. And it was very funny. Levon's a hilarious guy. And folks, if you don't know the most legendary interview of all time, you gotta know the most legendary interview of all time. Hikaru Nakamura, Ivan Sokolov, round 2, Tata Steel 2013. After a long and brutal game, this was the interview. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna show you the game first, and then we will end on that clip. Hikaru began with an English. It was an imbalanced one with bishop b4, and a very complicated line very early as black gave away the bishop, and then proceeded to just strike at the center before white was able to get castled. All right, queen d5. You'll notice Hikaru does have the bishop pair, so he's trying to open up the center. Sokolov doing a nice job here, puts his rooks on the center lines, and definitely the opening battle was won by Sokolov, right? Like, Hikaru sacrifices the exchange here because I'm not sure he saw another way forward. That's just the truth. Like, black just got a great position from the opening, and so Hikaru decided, all right, I'm going to sacrifice and I'm going to get a significant advantage. I'm going to, give away a little bit of my advantage, but I'm going to try to defend. Now, throughout this game, the advantage hovered around -2, like -2.3, -2.4. It was just winning for a while, but Hikaru is one of the best players in the world, and he's going to try to defend. Here, queen d4 apparently won by black. And the idea was that you're going to take, and then you're going to take one of these pawns, and you're going to get to the king. Sokolov did it this way and allowed a little bit of a consolidation. He still picked up c4, but suddenly Hikaru broke free. Okay, now the only move for advantage is queen c6. It was found, and we went to an endgame. So Sokolov couldn't find the exact win in the middle game, and now has to convert this endgame. And it was a long game. I mean, it was 2 rooks and 3 pawns versus rook, bishop, and 4, and Sokolov just had a feeling that the rook versus bishop endgame was a win. So he tried, and he tried. But Hikaru created a dark squared blockade, and Hikaru just danced around with his bishop, awaiting the pawns to come forward. Sokolov pushed. He got the h-pawn. Here comes king g4. Apparently here, he had to play rook d3 was the winning move, deflecting the bishop in some direction, like let's say it goes here, then rook e3. But there's also king g4. And if the pawn starts running, there's h4, f6, and this pawn tries to run, but h3 is too fast, not to mention you can always grab this pawn, and then come back to f3. So it was important for Sokolov in some of these positions to play a certain move that would deflect the bishop first, and then he would do this. Instead of that, Sokolov did king g4 and still tried to get the right move order. But unfortunately, he missed rook g3. He had to once again give kind of like an extra check or an extra attacking move on the bishop to force the king some way, because what happens is f6 is now a draw. f6 is a draw. Like there's a few like very tricky lines here. Rook g3, king h2, but f6 now seems like it's a draw. And after a long, hard-fought battle, suddenly Sokolov is no longer winning. But he still played. He still played. He still tried to push, but there's nothing. There's just absolutely nothing. There's no way through. The bishop guards both pawns. The pawn even made it to e7. And finally, it took 90 moves, but the players agreed to a draw. Sokolov was winning multiple times in the middle game. He was winning multiple times in the endgame. But sadly, he made a draw. And then he proceeded to give one of the best lines ever recorded in a chess interview, and I think the best line ever recorded in a chess interview.
Ivan, up to one point it seemed like a beautiful game.
I was completely winning. If I don't kill myself tonight, I'm gonna live 1,000 years.
I was completely winning. If I don't kill myself tonight, I'm gonna live 1,000 years. And luckily, Ivan Sokolov did not proceed with that prophecy. He very much stayed alive, and he actually recently coached the Uzbek youngster team to a gold medal in the Olympiad. Folks, chess is a damn hard game. And I'm sure some of you have broken stuff, broken walls, hopefully not broken yourself over a game of chess. But man, it is tough to lose sometimes. It's also tough to win sometimes and get asked some bogus questions, but definitely losing and getting asked absurd questions is more difficult. So yeah, that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed. Shout out to Mr. Daji for cultivating the idea on his Substack post. Definitely go check him out on Twitter. Chess Meme World Champ. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one. Get out of here.